Hey, howdy, hello. This is Tanya the Tour Guide bringing you this week's episode of New Orleans Secretness. This week, we'll be diving in to the vampire lores and legends of New Orleans. Thunder rolls over the Mississippi River. Gas lamps flicker against wet cobblestones. A church bell tolls in the distance. The city breathes. Not like a city, like a creature. New Orleans has always existed in the space between worlds. French and Spanish, Catholic and pagan, life and death, the sacred and the profane. Here, the dead are not buried beneath the earth, they rise above it. The cemeteries resemble miniature cities. The street pulses with music, sweat, seduction, grief, ritual, and intoxication. And for centuries, people have whispered, what if vampires are real here? Tonight, we descend into the darkest mythology of the Crescent City. Not merely the fictional vampires of Hollywood, but the legends rooted in disease, immigration, eroticism, death rituals, occult obsession, yellow fever, class division, forbidden sexuality, Gothic literature, and the seductive architecture of New Orleans itself. This is the story of the Casket Girls, the mysterious Jacques Saint Germain, the Carter brothers, Anne Rice and the transformation of modern vampire mythology, the underground vampire subculture, vampire balls, blood rituals, and the strange reason Louisiana became the modern capital of the undead imagination. This is not merely folklore. This is New Orleans vampires. Long before New Orleans existed, Europe feared the dead. The word vampire emerged from Eastern European folklore, but nearly every civilization had its own version of blood-drinking reverence. Ancient Greece feared the Vracolakas. Romanian bird the Strigoi. Serbia feared the vampire. Medieval Germany told stories of corpse-like predators feeding upon sleeping villagers. These legends were not fantasy entertainment. They were explanations. Why did bodies bloat after death? Why did corpses appear to bleed from the mouth? Why did fingernails continue to appear to grow? People didn't understand decomposition, so they created monsters. During plague years, entire villages were wiped out. Superstition became survival. Corpses were exhumed, heads removed, bodies staked, and of all those fears crossed the Atlantic. French colonists, sailors, prisoners, prostitutes, soldiers, priests, and settlers brought old world terrors into Louisiana swamps. Then New Orleans gave those fears new life. In the early 1700s, Louisiana was failing. The colony was brutal. Disease, heat, mosquitoes, starvation, violence, isolation. Most settlers were men. France needed women. So the crown began sending young women to the colony. Some came from orphanages, some from convents, some from poorhouses, some may have come from prisons and correction facilities. These women became known as filles à cassette, the girls with little trunks. Later Americans mistranslated cassette into casket, and from one linguistic misunderstanding, a vampire legend was born. The first famous group arrived aboard Le Pelican in 1704. The girls were young, maybe between 14 and 19 years old. The voyage was horrific. Mosquitoes in Cuba infected many with yellow fever. Some died immediately after arrival. Others appeared ghostly pale. Their gums receded from scurvy. Their skin blistered in sunlight. To frightened colonists, they looked undead. But these women were not passive victims. The Pelican Girl staged one of the earliest female labor rebellions in Gulf Coast history. When husbands failed to build homes or provide food, the women refused bed and board. No shelter, no marriage privileges. The men eventually complied. The rebellion became legendary. The young women were temporarily housed under the protection of the Ursuline nuns at the old Ursuline convent, and here the mythology explodes. Legend says the girls slept in the convent attic beside their mysterious trunks. The neighbors began vanishing. Young men fell ill. People whispered about blood loss. The nuns supposedly sealed the attic windows with nails blessed by the Pope himself. To this day, guides claim the attic windows have never opened again. But history complicates the legend. The current Ursuline convent wasn't completed until 1734. Many casket girls arrived years earlier. The sealed attic narrative likely evolved much later through tourism, Gothic fiction, and vampire obsession. Still, the myth endured because New Orleans wanted it to endure, because the city feeds on atmosphere. And no city in America wears Gothic fantasy quite like New Orleans. New Orleans became a breeding ground for vampire mythology because death was everywhere. Yellow fever epidemics devastated the city repeatedly through the 18th and 19th century. Victims developed pale skin, sun sensitivity, bleeding, fever, delirium, gaunt appearances. Bodies were buried quickly, sometimes prematurely. Above-ground tombs heated under the Louisiana sun. When tombs reopened, bodies appeared swollen and bloodied. To frighten people, the dead looked alive. Meanwhile, illnesses like porphyria, severe sunlight sensitivity, and gum recession, the symptoms eerily mirrored classic vampire descriptions. Science had not yet caught up with superstition, and New Orleans became fertile ground for the undead mythology. In the early 1900s, a mysterious French aristocrat appeared in New Orleans. His name, Jacques Saint-Germain. Handsome, cultured, wealthy, educated. He moved into a lavish townhouse at Royal and Ursuline, 1041 Royal Street, and the city became obsessed with him. Jacques hosted extravagant soirees, artists, politicians, socialites, musicians. Everyone wanted inside. He spoke numerous languages, claimed knowledge of ancient Europe, and hinted that he descended from the mysterious immortal Comte Saint-Germain. The historical Comte Saint-Germain was one of Europe's greatest enigmas, an alchemist, diplomat, occultist, and court insider. He allegedly knew Voltaire, Casanova, Louis XIV, Catherine the Great, and Mesmer. Rumors claimed he possessed the Philosopher's Stone. Others believe he never aged. Even after records showed his death in 1784, sightings continued. When Jacques appeared in New Orleans, many believed the Count himself had returned. Then came the night that changed everything. A woman leapt from the balcony of Jacques' mansion, screaming in terror. She told police, "He tried to break my neck." Officers searched the house. No food, no dining utensils, no evidence of normal living. Only bottles of dark red liquid, and rooms stained with blood. By morning, Jacques Saint-Germain had vanished forever. No definitive records prove the story occurred exactly as told, but the legend became immortal. Because Jacques represented something irresistible to New Orleans, the seductive aristocratic predator, elegant, cultured, erotic, dangerous, a vampire perfectly suited to the French Quarter. Another terrifying story emerged in 1932. two dock workers, John and Wayne Carter. Legend claims police discovered victims tied to chairs inside their apartment. Wrists slashed, massive blood loss. The brothers supposedly drank the blood. But historians have never confirmed the story. No verified newspaper archive conclusively supports it, which raised a fascinating truth about New Orleans. The city's vampire lore often exists in the gray space between documentation and oral storytelling, and sometimes the myth becomes more powerful than reality. No figure transformed New Orleans vampire mythology more profoundly than Anne Rice. Born Howard Allen Francis O'Brien in 1941, Rice grew up surrounded by Catholicism, death, Southern Gothic atmosphere, and emotional intensity. After the devastating loss of her daughter Michelle to leukemia, Rice transformed grief into immortality mythology. Interview with the Vampire, published in 1976, the novel revolutionized vampires. Before Rice, vampires were often monsters. After Rice, they became tragic, sensual, existential, erotic, philosophical. Her vampires questioned mortality, immortality, loneliness, sexuality, and identity. And crucially, she moved vampire mythology from Transylvania to Louisiana. Lestat de Lioncourt, many believe Jacques Saint-Germain partially inspired Lestat. The elegant French aristocrat, the lavish parties, the seductive immortality. Rice never directly confirmed all parallels, but New Orleans embraced the connection immediately. Rice's novels carried strong homoerotic undertones at a time when mainstream fiction avoided queer intimacy. The Vampire Chronicles explored desire, identity, forbidden longing, eternal companionship, and emotional dependency. The vampire became outsider, seducer, exile, eternal wanderer. This deeply resonated with the LGBTQ audiences. In New Orleans, with its long history of theatrically sexual fluidity and nightlife, became the perfect culture home for these stories. Interview with the Vampire, the 1994 adaptation starring Tom Cruise, Brad Pitt, Kirsten Dunst, cemented New Orleans as the vampire capital of America. Suddenly, Royal Street, cemeteries, balconies, fog, gas lamps, Garden District mansions all became visual shorthand for vampirism itself. Modern vampire communities are real, not supernatural mortals, but organized subcultures, some identified as sanguinarians, others as psychic vampires. Sanguinarians, these individuals consensually consume small amounts of donor blood. The practice is structured carefully. Participants emphasize consent, medical testing, sterile tools, safety protocols. Most live entirely normal public lives. Teachers, artists, professionals, service workers. The vampire identity becomes spiritual, psychological, aesthetic, erotic, or energetic. Others believe psychic vampires. They absorb energy emotionally or spiritually through meditation, crowds, touch, intimacy, ritual, emotional exchange. To outsiders, it may sound fantastical. To practitioners, it is deeply personal and identity-based. The French Quarter transformed vampire culture into tourism, fashion, nightlife, and immersive theater. Featured locations include Boutique de Vampire, the Vampire Cafe, and Potions Lounge. New Orleans turned vampire mythology into a living economy. In 1989, fans of Anne Rice began gathering in costume. What started as literary fandom evolved into ritualized Gothic theater. Then came the legendary Memnoch Ball, hosted by Anne Rice herself. Tarot readers, fortune tellers, candlelit rituals, velvet capes, masquerades. The modern New Orleans Vampire Ball was born. Endless Night Vampire Balls. Father Sebastian's Endless Night events transformed vampire culture into immersive nightlife spectacle. Part Venetian masquerade, part Gothic cabaret, part ritual theater. Thousands now travel to New Orleans annually during Halloween season, not because they believe in literal vampires, but because New Orleans allows people to become mythological versions of themselves. Why did vampire mythology flourish here more than anywhere else in America? Because New Orleans already feels immortal. The city survives fires, floods, hurricanes, epidemics, war, corruption, death. Yet it persists, like a vampire itself. The architecture feels European. The cemeteries resemble necropolises. The climate breeds decay. Music drifts through darkness at all hours. Even time behaves strangely here. The past never fully leaves New Orleans, and vampires are creatures of the past. Maybe vampires never truly existed in New Orleans, or maybe they did. Maybe the real vampires were disease, obsession, desire, colonial exploitation, immortality fantasies, loneliness, grief, addiction, seduction, memory itself. But legends survive for a reason. And New Orleans understands something few cities do. People want enchantment. They want darkness wrapped in beauty. They want immortality. And in New Orleans, the dead are never truly gone. The gas lamps still flicker. The attic windows still remain shut. The music still drifts through Wall Street. And somewhere, deep in the quarter, someone still raises a glass of dark red wine. Thank you for joining me on another episode of New Orleans Secret Mist. Please, if you could, subscribe, share, like, and tell your friends about me too. I'd love to get any comments that you may have about the subject matter. If you'd like to book a tour with me, please see the description. You can find a link so that when you're visiting New Orleans, we get to meet personally and I get to show you around my home. This is Tanya the Tour Guide, New Orleans Secret Mist. See you next week.